Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, May 17th, and I'm almost at the end of the first half of 2018, or what I loosely define as the 2018 first semester. However, do not be dismayed because it's an endless teaching cycle. So what will happen is everybody who's on board, you're welcome to stay on board. It's not like you have to re-enroll or anything like that. And so if you're just joining in, if this is like the first webinar that you're ever watching, also don't despair, because I'm doing essentially end of semester wrap up in these next couple of videos to re-emphasize and go over again the most salient points of what I have to present here. And also, like, I never mean to be boring or repetitious or anything like that, but it's just like learning music, that every time you go over a song or you learn a melody or you play a chord again, it's reinforcing that neural pathway, and that way it's like it really sticks. It's information that really sticks. So I'm going to, in the first hour of this presentation today, and I got my little dog boss over there. I thought she was going to jump up. We'll get a visit from her, I'm sure, because I give her like a long walk and a long, like, chew toy and everything like that. So she'll take a little nap, but then it lasts for just a little. She's like a little kid, and then she's like, okay, now I'm ready to play again. So she'll come back. Level 1 will be the basics of flying rainbow lasagna. What is it? What are the concepts behind it? What is it doing on a genetic level? How do you actually do it? Just like if we were talking about physics, we're going to talk about, what are the aspects of anatomy of an atom, the body parts of an atom, how do they fit together, how do they work, what does it mean in terms of reality? And then in advanced physics, in advanced flying rainbow lasagna, non-physics, what I will talk about is how to apply these concepts more broadly, like not just being one lone musician playing your guitar in your own genetic laboratory, but connecting to other times and places. So the more advanced application of what can be done with that. Let me also just adjust my microphone. I hope this isn't going to make anything go hinky-jinky. Hold on. Okay, good. I think I did that perfectly, and you can still hear me okay. All right, so first let me go to a few images, and let me just see if I can find my images properly too. Bear with me if I'm doing lots of squinting and scrolling, because I've got everything, like here's my class lectures. I want to go to, I know I'm squinting and scrolling. Good, here, okay. Good, wonderful. And wait, now I have to go back to screen share. Again, thank you for bearing with me. We get it, guys, we get it. This is what I want to show you. Okay. Just affirm for me in the chat that you can see I pulled up a picture of flying rainbow lasagna inside of some DNA. Let me grab my magic trackpad. This little thing is literally called magic trackpad. So just making sure that you can actually see. Good. Okay, wonderful. And let's make sure that I can annotate also. Yes. Okay. So this is like just a little simple composite drawing that I put together with this, off the rack, ready to wear, drawing about DNA. Like I just made that little swoop there, that red line and the green line that's below it. This is DNA. DNA is unzipped. So the whole idea is, I'm reaffirming this. Your DNA is not a flat, static object. It is a vibrating, twisted together, dancing. It twists, it untwists, it furls, it unfurls. It's constantly moving, it's constantly vibrating, it's dancing. And as part of its normal behavior, it unzips itself. So that's what we're seeing over here. It's like we have one half of the DNA spiral on one side, one on the other, and then we have these little teeth that come down just like the teeth of a zipper that might hold your genes on your body, right? Literally your Levi's jeans, like your denim jeans on your body. So we have this zipper arrangement, and as part of the natural life process of DNA, what happens is the zipper gets unzipped, where I'm making that red line, it splits apart. And that's what's going on in this drawing over here. I'm making that red line over there, it splits apart, and it becomes what I define as negative space. Not like bad or wrong or evil in any way. Negative space, like The negative space of this cup is where my juice actually can go. It is the volume. It is the place that can actually hold volume. So all of this, I'm trying to give you description, backstory in order to understand that there's a natural part of behavior of DNA where it is destabilized. Instead of it being zipped up together and nice and stable, it's destabilized. And that's part of the transcription process where we have RNA messengers that can then, like if I hold my hand up to the camera, if these are like, whatever, if this is like, you know, the DNA, I don't know, I'll go back to my face, go back to my face. If you have these two threads of DNA that are zipped and twisted together, what happens as a normal part of the behavior of DNA is that it gets unzipped, and then there's a little RNA messenger guy that can go in there and actually read the pages. And this happens because you're not, like the library that holds your DNA, the nucleus of your cell, is supposed to be like a sanctuary that only like very, very special people and things and objects can go inside of that sanctuary. And so it's not just like for the it's the hoi polloi. It's not just for like the regular guys. So only RNA messengers can go in and read these pages. And it's like the original books in the library are sacrosanct. You have to wear white gloves to touch them. Like the original DNA is special. So if you need to bring a message out to the rest of the cell or the rest of the body, you make a copy. Just like if you went into a special library of rare books, you could take like a photocopy, like a Xerox image of what's in that book, but you can't actually take the book out of the library. So all of the original DNA stays in the library, which is the cell nucleus. But RNA messengers go into the library, they unzip. So, and they unzip in two different ways. So this is, we've got two strands that are twisted together, that making, you know, like one line of DNA, one vibrating string, and it gets unzipped, and then you can see all the different teeth in there. But DNA also gets supercoiled, which is when it gets twisted to an enormous amount of stored energy. And then it's kind of like loops, like springs, like a slinky. My fingers are kind of like the same slinkiness. And you can understand sometimes the spring is tightly coiled together, and then those pages cannot be easily read by the RNA messengers. And when the pages are relaxed, and this process is called methylation, or, you know, the coiling or uncoiling process is called methylation, that determines whether those aspects of DNA can be read, again, by DNA messengers. So all of this in order to say that DNA has different behavior. Sometimes it can be accessed by the RNA transcribers, the copiers. Sometimes it cannot be accessed by them. And the whole idea behind that is epigenetics. Let me just drink water here. Epigenetics, again, I know I'm repetitive here, meaning the code that rules the code, because identical twins do not develop identical diseases. Some of them have their springs widely spread apart for the blueprint that says how to get cancer. And some of them have their springs tightly coiled together that says how to get cancer. It's in there, but they're not accessing that recipe. So that's the idea of epigenetics. All of this in order to give backstory for the idea that when DNA is unzipped so that the RNA messengers can get in there, it's destabilized. It's in an indeterminate state, and I want to call it a quantum indeterminate state, but I want to also describe what exactly do I mean when I say that. So a quantum indeterminate state, this is kind of the idea of, you know, Schrodinger's cat, something that can be in several states at once that has not yet been determined what state it's in due to viewership or observership. So the Schrodinger's cat, I'm sure that this is something that you already understand if you're in this class. You know, the thought experiment, you put a cat in a box and it might be dead, it might be alive. We don't actually know if it's dead or alive until we open the box and look, because up until that point, the cat exists in a state of both deadness and aliveness. And that is our participation as observers looking at what is inside of the box that collapses those potential waveforms, we would call them fifth dimensional and higher possibilities, into an actual experienced embodied reality that would be our third dimensional bodies moving through the fourth dimension, you know, on a timeline. What puts us on a particular timeline? The basic answer is observership. So wait, now I have to draw pictures too about how your DNA is integument that ties us together from moment to moment. So now I'm going back to screen share. Go back to this where I've already been drawing and scratching. Okay. Train cars of reality. And now I get the picture, good. So each one of these little boxes that I'm drawing down here in green I'm just doing super rough sketches. Like that's one perfect box, but I'm going to just draw a bunch of them that are very super shorthand, but you understand they're all boxes. They're all third dimensional, like rooms, like a room that you're in. And each one of these rooms is a moment. And we can define a moment as the smallest slice of time that we can chop time into without making it so small that we can no longer define it as time. Just like if I draw a cake over here, here's a cake, I want to chop it into a little tiny cake piece, but then I want to chop that into an even smaller slice and an even smaller slice, and even smaller slice. How small of a slice of a cake can I make the crumb of cake before we can no longer define it as actual cake if it's just like a molecule of chocolate? So each one of these little boxes, little moments of time, is the smallest slice of time that we can chop a cake of time into and still say that it's time. And so this is like, let's say this is, you know, moment number 1, and then moment number 2, and moment number 3. My pen doesn't work that perfectly. And then as we're moving along the screen to the right, we're moving through time. And this is the basic premise. You know, it seems like I'm talking to, you know, like very basic rudimentary concepts here. It's 3:30 right now, and we've been sitting here in, you know, watching this video together, or performing in this video together, participating, and you know, we've moved through time. From 1 minute to the next minute to the next minute. We're not in the same body. If this is the body that we started in at the beginning of this video conference, we've jumped our consciousness through time in several different, like, you know, there's a little stick figure in here. Here's a little guy. Here's a little guy. Here's a little guy. That little guy is you. That's your body. I'm not in, none of us are in the same body that we were in 5 minutes ago. We have literally jumped our consciousness. Let me get a different color here. We have jumped our consciousness from moment to moment. Look, my consciousness in blue is now jumping from moment to moment. What is this thing that makes this happen? The answer is the dance movement of your DNA that makes us jump from moment to moment. That's also called being alive. Moving through time equals being alive equals your DNA is dancing. I'll go back to my face in order to say that again. So once again, moving through time means that we're alive. Moving through time equals being alive equals your DNA is dancing. Moving, just like, I don't know if you can hear those notes. This is an electric piano. It's not a real piano with real vibrating strings, but it's the recording of vibrating strings making a synthetic sound. And when the strings are making a sound, they're making music, they're alive, they're playing. Our DNA, when it's moving, when it's either uncoiled or tightly coiled or twisting or furling or unfurling, when it's doing all of these movements, it's alive. If you're a dead corpse and you're not animated and there's no consciousness flowing through your body, your DNA is not moving. Your DNA is not active. And also, your consciousness is not moving through time. Your consciousness is not jumping from train car to train car to train car to train car. That journey has ended. And so again, like if you're in this class, you're very familiar, I'm describing this sculpture with my sketch of the time field, this little lower quadrant down here where we're starting from the periphery because of the genetic degradation. And I did this recap last week. And then we are being refined in terms of consciousness and moving inward, inward, inward towards the center, towards that, you know, inner inevitability of reaching what I would describe as ascended mastery. But it doesn't necessarily, I don't know if what people think of that, but it basically means that you are the fully refined version of self in terms of characteristics and life choices, all right? And if you are not embodying the right characteristics, or if you have not made the right life choices, you're askew and your train cars end on the membrane of death. Like I want to say, you know, where I'm pointing with my finger right there, that's the membrane of death. And I want to say your train cars like smash into a brick wall or go over a cliff, or there's no more train cars, basically. Your consciousness hops, 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 then there's nothing left to hop into. And that's what that membrane of death is. It means there's no more road, there's no more sidewalk, there's no more forward movement through time. And to contrast, that central core timeline is the only timeline where there is continued possibility for forward movement through time. It's an eternal journey that never has to end. And of course, that's the timeline that we're all trying to embody. In ancient Atlantis, I spoke about this last week, everybody embodied it. Ascension was inevitable. Ascension is still inevitable, but it's just a question of how much rigmarole do we each individually have to go through? How many wrong notes do we have to play on the piano? Like if we want to play this note, but we're going like, wrong, 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 trial and error, try again, Groundhog's Day, try again, until we finally get to the right note that we were supposed to play all along. So none of that is the way we're supposed to be playing the instruments of our body. Your body is your instrument. It's instead of a piano with vibrating strings, your body is full of vibrating DNA. And now we'll get a little bit into, I'm just making sure everybody's muted so I don't get feedback or whatever, even though you're welcome to unmute if you have questions or ask questions in the chat. The idea of moving through time, what makes us move through time, when we make good choices, what makes us make good choices, how do we get onto that central core timeline, what happens when we begin to flying rainbow lasagna. So the basics of this are that, that's a very strange way of saying it, the basics of this are that. The last moments of your life, the final denouements that are all arranged on the membrane of death, they're arranged on a membrane, on a skin, all right? So topologically, topology is the study of surfaces. We're now looking at this shape and how it relates to this shape, that this shape is the lower dimensional version of this shape in exactly the same way that cube is to tesseract, torus is to flying rainbow lasagna. All of that is math speak for, it's like if you take a flat piece of paper and fold it into origami, this is analogous to the flat piece of paper, this is analogous to the origami. And what happens, what is special about this arrangement is that in this formation, with this level of access to dimensions and degrees of freedom, the membrane of death cannot be easily rearranged like puzzle pieces. Like imagine it's like, oh, there's all of these moments of time that are like interlocking puzzle pieces. We can see them there, but we can't do anything about them. But when we take this shape and make it jump up and down in a higher dimensional reality, all of a sudden we can rearrange the events on the membrane of death. We can rearrange the events that add up to death. If we can rearrange the experience of what that membrane is, because all of a sudden that membrane becomes communicative with, and if you can see this in decent lighting on the camera, the inside becomes the outside, and then the outside becomes the inside. And this is actually a good segue, and I'm going to go back to that thing about DNA and that picture, but let me do this and let me show you this animation. Because this shape has 8 basic flanges. Let's move a light so you can see it better. Can you see that better? I hope you can. 8 basic flanges. Now count around with you. It's like we're getting ready, we're getting the band together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8. So there's 4 that are on this side, and then there are 4 that are on the other side. And so you're just looking at it from the top down here. So this shape is the end result of an oscillation of this point that goes back and forth 8 times. And that point is this central convergence point right here. This convergence point is the source of all information and the destination of all information, or consciousness, or characteristics, or people, or organisms, or timelines, or however you would like to define that. So it's the source, it's the 0th dimension, it's the presence of everything, it's infinity. And yes, it is a basic truism that everything is the source. However, there are also caveats in applying that basic understanding and empirical wisdom to the actual experience of being embodied in the world. Because if you're like, everything is singularity, let me go hug a poisonous snake. Don't hug a poisonous snake. Even though it's a singularity, it's coming from a different direction and it's moving at a different rate, and it has all of the agenda of being a poisonous snake. So this is also how we can understand the demonic occupiers of the interstices, the turds who refuse to flush, those pesky occupiers, it doesn't mean you should hug them. If you're like, hey, wait, they came from the singularity too. It's all God, it's all singularity. Yes, that's true, and we got to mitigate this through our anthropomorphic filter, because you're not supposed to hug a demon. You're not supposed to be a demonic apologist. You're not supposed to say, oh, they're allowed to do whatever they want to do. Like, no, they're not allowed to do whatever they want to do. There's cosmic laws. So some of these cosmic laws have to do with, having vibrating strings like an instrument, and that we are affecting one another, but that other people are affecting us too. So it's this back and forth, and that back and forth, mutual affecting of one another is love. Love is a tone that we make when we give and receive in equal portions. And if you're giving more than you're receiving, then it's not actually love. And if you're receiving more than you're giving, that's not actually love either. So these beings that occupy the interstices, they're scavengers, or, parasites. They take. They don't give. So it's very out of balance. And we don't like them because they take from us, the living, the embodied, because we've got these wonderful divine connections in every cell and in every atom and in all of the chakras or energy systems of our body. We have a connection to the source of love, energy, consciousness, divine awareness that they don't have. They don't have a mouth to eat that food. So they're like, oh, you guys eat the food, then I'll eat you. And that's an excellent little way to, you know, just fix this right on up. But no, 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 that's totally against cosmic laws. So this is also why I invented spontaneously the flying rainbow lasagna. It is in response to all of these cosmic laws that were being either misapplied or underutilized or under-acknowledged, because it's actually a beautiful divine symphony that was set up by this incredibly genius composer, you know, this wonder, I'm going to drink of water. And then I look around at the symphony, the way it's being played here and now in this time, bodies that are out of tune, human society that is out of tune, economy that is out of tune, religion that is out of tune, all of that is on purpose. None of that is by accident. And now it is our job, each one of our individual jobs as musicians, retune the own body, retune the relationships with other people, retune the relationships with the environment. We're getting there. Flying Rainbow Lasagna is basically the solution to how to fix all of the things. It's the big bucket and big mop that I've been talking about, because we have a lot of muddy footprints to fix in terms of the genetic degradation. So blah, blah, blah. This is not a static object. This is the end result of that singularity, that source, oscillating. When it oscillates, and I'll show you a video in order to depict all of this, it leaves behind like a wake, like just the same way, you know, if you have something flying across the sky or an ocean-going vessel going along some water, it leaves a wake behind it. So this oscillation of the singularity of the 0th dimension up and down, it leaves behind it an energetic wake, or like a perturbation of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness in the form of the flying rainbow lasagna. It's an oscillation, and it becomes a genetic placeholder. So wait, first I'm going to go back to this whiteboard, so picture over here that I've been drawing on, genetic placeholder. So here's, again, to just reiterate, your DNA is unzipped so that the RNA messenger can go in there. However, it is being held in a happy way with this genetic placeholder, just getting a color that you can kind of see. Here, I'll get like a black color. This flying rainbow lasagna here in the middle is being used, like I keep saying, as a genetic placeholder. Instead of those two parts of DNA being unzipped and being kind of like loosey-goosey, willy-nilly, like kind of flandering all over the place, this shape here creates a balance and a symmetry to the structure so that everything doesn't just collapse. If all of your DNA got unzipped and became, you know, loose and unstructured, on one hand, you would have total possibility open to you. We're talking about, this is rearranging the possibilities of your life. When your DNA is unzipped, it's like, oh, wait, anything can happen. This is all unzipped. It's like rolling the dice. It's like pressing the giant big red button that makes the infinite improbability drive happen. You're unzipped, anything can happen. And putting the flying rainbow lasagna oscillation placeholder there stabilizes that state of quantum indeterminacy. Like, we're not necessarily alive, not necessarily dead. We are not a collapsed waveform. We have the potential to experience all these things, but those potentials have not been realized yet. And that's actually an opportunity for a huge state of empowerment. It's like, say, you know, if you're hovering between two different states and not yet defined as to what exactly you are or what exact state you are experiencing, there's a great deal of, yes, Eric is saying Schrodinger's humans. That's exactly what can happen. When you flying rainbow lasagna your DNA, when you make your DNA unzip and then hold it stabilized in that unzipped formation with flying rainbow lasagna, meditations, visualizations, intentions, what happens is we become Schrodinger's humans. We become infinite beings of pure infinite possibility and probability without having to be collapsed into waveforms of this is actually happening, this is actually happening. It's a hugely empowered state for being able to rewrite reality. That's what I've said. Be an auteur of your existence. Rewrite reality. You can erase out what you don't want in terms of disease and scars, and write in what you do want in terms of healing and potential for vitality. And that includes moving through time, but without chronological degradation, without becoming older, like the way that humans usually define older, without becoming more decrepit is the word. Moving through time without becoming biologically more decrepit. maybe even becoming more adept, more healthy, more vital as we move through time. Imagine that. And then being able to just continue as we accrete more light and more consciousness to continue to move through time and never have to die, never have to hit the membrane of death. That is what this infinite journey is all about. So dancing like a flying rainbow lasagna is a practice that I do. I encourage everyone to do it. And I do it during specific times of the day. Like I will set aside times to be like, now it is time to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. But that's just like saying if I exercise, I'm gonna be like, okay, like now I'm gonna go walk 3 miles. I'm specifically setting aside time to do that exercise, but my body is still metabolizing at every other time of the day. And if you walk 3 miles, then you have burned whatever, 300 calories, but then also you've raised your metabolism that you then have a reverberation of that exercise throughout the whole day, or you lifted weights, or you did jumping jacks, or whatever it is. When you do the flying rainbow lasagna, it is like doing, first of all, a huge athletic achievement in the spiritual realm. And it affects that moment that you're doing, putting you into a state of, like anything is possible. And that state of anything is possible, even when you return to your regular mundane state of existence, your body is still metabolizing and sending out those waves of possibility. It's a way of rearranging the events of reality. And let's say that my hand is made up of timelines, and each one of these is a line of train cars, like trains leaving the station. And I was drawing those little boxes, and each box is a moment. Well, how do we get from this train car over here where my pinky is to the train car over here where my middle finger is? How do we do that? How do we turn the steering wheel of consciousness? And my answer is through flying rainbow lasagna. It's an actual practice. It's not just a weird word phrase that I use all the time. And so part of it is music theory, the intellectual exercise of what exactly are we doing? Oh, wait. You've been in this class. This is like the 16th installment of the year. Everybody who's been in this class has been doing the work, exposing yourselves to these ideas. Ideas change the genetic code. Yes, ideas change the behavior of DNA and the dance movements of DNA. So we all come here as these perfectly formed little babies, and we don't even know about death. And what happens is at a certain point, we are exposed to death through death of a goldfish, death of a grandma, death of something. And then death is explained to us. And before that moment, your DNA is doing a particular dance, and then you learn about death, and then your DNA starts to do a different dance. And that's the dance that includes the expectation of death, as opposed to the expectation of continued life that continues onward, or this ascension timeline that means that you never have to hit the membrane of death. That we actually have to be taught about the existence of death, and then we are told it's inevitable and we must accept it as part of our journey here, being alive beings, and that then it literally makes us run that program. Not that I'm a transhumanist, but everybody's running these software programs. Flying rainbow lasagna is how you can rewrite those software programs, rewrite those basic presumptions. You don't have to become more decrepit as you move through time. You don't have to eat food in order to move through time. We do have to keep our DNA dancing to move through time, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have to like get an apple off a tree and mash it up with my moving mouth parts and stick it in my belly and get probiotics to digest it. That is not actually what we're supposed to be doing through time. We're supposed to cultivate our higher faculties, pointing out my window, get all the energy that we need from the sun, like from a clean solar panel in our mind that comes directly into us, and then not have to experience death or create the death of another organism in order for us to sustain the vitality of our present existence. I'm just drinking more water. I want to show you this video too. When we do this oscillation. So what I do is, and I have a whole PDF about this. So David Lear is a student of the class, but I don't think that he's tuned in these days. But he was around last year. And in watching many of the videos that I did, he is wonderful in distilling the ideas that I verbalize into written words, because I'm not that adept with, written words and distilling it down in that way. So he wrote a wonderful PDF I will include that in the description of how exactly to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. And part of it is envisioning, the same way that we use our imagination to envision the Merkaba. You envision this shape. And also, like when I'm playing the piano, when I'm really in a song, I'm grooving on the song. Oh, I don't know what just happened. Wait. I don't know what just happened. Okay. There we go. Thank you. I pressed something. I don't even know what I pressed. When I'm grooving on the piano, I'm, playing a song, and I'm not necessarily thinking about where does my pinky have to be? Where does my thumb have to be? Like when you're grooving. You don't necessarily have to think about all of these particulars. And in getting the energy going, it might be good to think about the particulars. So it is this 8, it goes on a beat of 8. back and forth. And then there are, first I'm going to describe it verbally, then I'll show you these animations that I work together. So David Lear wrote this PDF, and he also facilitated me sending sketches to a professional animator to have these animations done. So I don't have the software or the hardware to be able to do these renderings. So it was incredibly helpful to me I wrote these like hieroglyphic instructions, like make it look like this, make it this color, make it move like this. And then the person did it and presented it to me for further transformation, like if it needed to be changed or edited or whatever. So yeah, it was a collaboration to be able to even manifest these lasagna animations. So how do we do it? How do you do the flying rainbow lasagna? The first thing is understanding what the singularity is, that central convergence point in the center of this sculpture. That's everythingness. And that everythingness at a certain point, in order to make this flying rainbow lasagna shape, just trying to get some light on it here, everythingness needs to be put into a context where it will jump up and down. Because when it's just this shape, this is like what present level Earth science describes as time according to the cosmology of the Big Bang. So I'm not a scientist, I don't promote this, but I'm just saying this is what the cosmology or our origin story of time is in this time and place. It says there was once upon a time, children, there was a very, very super compressed little tiny dense thing that contained all energy and all thought and all possibilities and probabilities. And one day it just spontaneously decided to expand, and that became the ever expanding bubble of time. And this is called the Big Bang. And science describes the Big Bang as like, if there's a bubble, everything that's inside of the bubble is the past. The bubble's surface is the moment now, but science does not recognize anything beyond the surface level of the bubble. It's like the bubble is just sitting there in a contextless vacuum, not even in a vacuum. There's nothing around it. And science describes as this bubble keeps on expanding that the present moment now keeps expanding, but it doesn't formally even recognize the existence of the future. And even if we took God's fingers and we dimpled that bubble and make it mush in like this and mush in like this and mush in like this, that's what creates this shape right here. But we've still got the outside versus the inside. And in order for this shape to move in a higher dimensional context, you got to place it in a context. So now I'll just go to a little drawing. How do we do the drawing? Blah, blah, blah. Go to a whiteboard. We're getting there, and I know I'm moving fast, and I know I'm talking really fast. Here's that sculpture that I hold up all the time. This is a super, really sloppy sketch, but you know what I'm talking about. I think this might be, oh my goodness, the sloppiest sketch I've ever made on a video. But we take that sloppy sketch, and what we do is put it in a context. I'm now placing that time vortex in a box. It's now like in a box with a fox, with some green eggs and ham. Once you place that sculpture or that time bubble or that ever-expanding time, unit, opportunity, whatever, in a context, we can then do two things. We can either move the time bubble up and down within that context, or we can keep the time bubble stable in one position, and we can move the entire room up and down, shake it up and down like you're having a big giant earthquake. And in either case, what happens is this shape, this green sculpture shape here, turns into a flying rainbow lasagna. And I've gone over this in various other videos too, but that is what happens. That central convergence point over here that was at the center of that sculpture becomes this point that's up here, and also this point that is down here. So that is the basics of what we are doing. And this is a magical activity. This is not a normal, ordinary, mundane activity like going to the grocery store, putting gas in your car. This is not like that. This is a magical activity. So in order to do a magical activity, like I have to get into a magical mindset. So I have a special chair. I don't know if you can see my special chair, a wonderful student of this class. I want to turn this so that you can see it a little bit. Can you see this? See this wonderful rainbow chair over here? Tiffany is a wonderful student of this class, and I had broken the seat cover of the chair through my vigorous flying rainbow lasagna dancing, so she made me a special rainbow replacement. So I sit in my rainbow special chair. I do it outside. I do sun gazing. Sun gazing puts gas into my car in order to make my vehicle go, and I'll describe explicitly how I do all this. I put on some of my most favorite awesome music, because music literally makes us want to dance, and music is definitely a frequency tool for transforming what emotion you're feeling, what emotion you're sending out, and where you're flying through time. And then I start to do this magical activity known as the flying rainbow lasagna. Let me show you the video now, because the video is worth 10,000 million of my flapping, moving mouth parts. And I see there's a question. I'll get to that question, I promise. Okay, first is how to form the flying rainbow lasagna. All right, guys, just make sure, I want you to see this wonderful video and, nope, wrong one. Okay, hold on a second, I have to stop share. I wanna choose a different video. Sorry, I'm not driving you crazy. I wanna go to this one, 8 half cones coming together. Choose the right one, do it. No, still not getting the right one? Okay, hold on, hold on. I don't know why sometimes this technology is just giving me problems. Here, we're gonna do this whole thing like this. How do I do this? This, right here, share screen, okay? And now, wait. I want not this one. I have 10 million things here that you're looking at too. I have to put things apart and I have all of these different little things. I have them all saved here. I'm telling you guys, I'm super organized. You just can't tell. Here, this one down, this one down, this one down, this one, no, this one over here, no. Come on, I know that I have this other video saved right over here for us. I put it here on purpose so that we could see it. Why you're not showing on my screen? Okay, guys, rather than me drive you crazy like this, here, let me go back here like this, go back here like this, go back here like this. No, why am I not finding this thing that I meticulously saved on my computer so that I could show it to everyone? It'll show up. Oh my goodness, it's showing up. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. All right. We finally got it. This over here. No, this over here. Awesome. Now you're going to see the real deal. Okay. Oh, Chiki's barking because she hears the mail truck coming by. Okay, guys, so this video shows what I'm talking about with the formation of the flying rainbow lasagna on an 8-count beat as the singularity is jumping up and down. So we've just jumped up, now we've jumped down, now we're jumping up again, now we're jumping down again, we're jumping through time, now we're jumping up again, now we're jumping down again, now we're jumping up again, now we're jumping down again. So the flying rainbow lasagna is the end result of that oscillation between where I'm putting my cursor. I don't know if you can see, let's get an annotation. Ooh, this is exciting. I can draw on the video. From this big giant black scribble dot where I'm making down there to this giant black scribble dot that I'm making up there. That is the singularity jumping up and down, and it jumps up and down 8 times in order to make this shape. Or it's like saying we put that time bubble in a higher dimensional context and we made the time bubble jump up and down 8 times in order to make this flying rainbow lasagna shape. And if I go back to my face, hold on a second. So that's like saying we took this shape and we made it jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And when we did that, it made this shape. And that's just like the topological, what we're doing with the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. What we're doing intellectually or on a more anthropomorphic, human-centered level is combining the singularity that is in self with the singularity that is somewhere else in context that we would define not as self. So Chiki is part of the singularity. I can flying rainbow lasagna with her. Flying rainbow lasagna in me, singularity in me, singularity in her, and I can jump back and forth 8 times. So what I do is combine my singularity that is within me with the sun. And this is all part of my practice of sun gazing. So, wait, let me drink some water and I'll go through all of the explicit instructions as to how to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. And let me answer this question too. I'm squinting and scrolling. Brandon asks a great question. He says, is it appropriate to ask what times you do the FRL dance so that we may do the dance with you at the same time? Totally appropriate. So usually it's in the middle of the day, like when the sun is highest and there's, you know, plenty of solar energy. And also I've had time to, I got to eat real physical food, not just sun food, but I got to eat real physical food. So I eat a hearty breakfast and I get plenty of exercise. Chiki and I can walk several miles in order to get ready for the day. And then, yeah, usually around the middle of the day. And I will tell everyone that the flying rainbow lasagna practice and phenomenon is non-local. And so in part 2, I'm going to get into the idea of a time crystal and what we're actually doing over time as we do this practice every day. And as it's cumulative. It's just like growing a garden. You don't grow a garden overnight. It's like, oh, look, I planted a seed. Tomorrow I'll have a huge garden. Like, no, 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 no. It takes time for the garden to grow. And when you do gardening, like the way I do gardening, you do a little bit every day. So it's like, oh, look, I planted that yesterday. And then today I put this into a bigger pot. And then now I pulled up these weeds. And you do it little by little. So flying rainbow lasagna is cumulative, just like learning the piano is cumulative. Yesterday I learned this chord, and today I learned this chord, and then tomorrow I'll learn another one, and then one day I'll put all of those chords together and I'll have a song. So flying rainbow lasagna, it's a practice, and it's also about if I did something on Monday and then I did something on Tuesday and I did something on Wednesday, they're actually all layering together over time. Like we could think of like Photoshop with the different layers of reality that are, it's like, or building an old-fashioned oil painting where you do glazes, you do more and more layers. Oil painting is actually a really good analogy because with oil painting, you got to leave time for the paint to dry between layers. So if you want to make really, really good realistic skin tones in oil painting, you do an underpainting, you let it dry. You put glazes on top, like thin coats of yellow and thin coats of peach and thin coats of brown. And then the more and more layers you add, the more that it mimics what real skin tones look like. That is what it is like to do the flying rainbow lasagna. It's a practice that adds over time. Every time we do it, we're adding a new layer and a new layer of possibilities. In advanced, I'll get into the idea that each one of us is a variable or a node on an enormous array of possibilities. And the more that each one of us does flying rainbow lasagna, the more complex that array becomes, the stronger the system becomes. But first we're just going to start off with playing the guitar in your own garage and figuring out your own instrument. And it's ironic because it's a partnerless dance. So I'm saying first we'll just focus on doing it as an individual, and I really wanted to stress this, and I need to drink more water because I'm going so fast. It does not mean that you have to wait until you find your ideal Mr. or Ms. Right, or your twin flame, or here, I'm just rearranging my chair, or whatever is your ideal life partner. You don't have to wait for anybody else, is what I'm trying to say. Doing this dance is the ultimate freedom, that you don't have to have anybody's, changing right here. You do not require anybody else's permission to do this. You don't need my permission. You don't need to get permission from my patent. I have not patented the flying rainbow lasagna so that you then have to pay me a fee to be able to do it. No, it's not like that at all. So each person can do this as an individual. It's not like doing the waltz where it's like, okay, great, I'm ready to do the waltz, but where's my partner? Or, human procreation, mammalian procreation, where it's like, okay, mommy needs a daddy and a daddy needs a mommy. It's not like that. This is the ultimate empowerment tool because you don't need to have anybody. You don't need to have a permission. You don't need to have a partner. You don't need to have anything other than your birthday suit and what we came here with. And I say this all the time, your body and your consciousness and your heart, your ability to love and be connected to the divine. These are the things that you need. So it is a connecting self to context. And I talk about this all the time. The membrane that we're dissolving is the membrane called the ego. The ego is the cosmology or origin story of who you are, where you came from, why you're here. And so when I first came here as Aurora, at first I didn't even have my name, Aurora, and I did not have an effective origin story. I realized, I'm trying to tell people about flying rainbow lasagna, and they were just like, who are you? Where do you come? Where do you live? Where do you come from? Where do you live? Who's your family? And I realized that all of without answering those questions, it was this was not edible to people because they were before we want to ingest information and ideas from you, we have to know who you are and where you came from. You have to develop an ego structure, a narrative, cosmology, or origin story or story of self. Your ego says, hey, this is who I am, this is my name, this is where I come from, this is where I live, this is my favorite shirt, this is my street address, this is my phone number, this is, who my dog, this is my favorite food. And then once you have all of that, then it's like, oh, look, there's a story of you. Now you're a person. Now you're accepted in society. So this narrative structure, usually it happens developing in early childhood and infancy. Little kids, little children develop their sense of self. They learn their name. They learn their likes and their dislikes. I like the color purple. I hate broccoli. I like pizza. I hate, Susie on the playground. Whatever. People develop their likes and their dislikes, and then they use that as their narrative story of self. It's a fiction, though, and the issue with this fiction is that although it might be effective in terms of social interface, because people will talk with you when they find out you've got a name and you've got, a house number and a dog, it's also a limiting factor because it cuts you off from context. Because the truth is, we're all everything. but that's an empirical truth. And we come here as these little tiny infant children embodying that empirical truth of being connected to the divine and being part of this, I would just say, luminous, like undifferentiated sea of consciousness. And then little by little, we become differentiated and we become individuated. And that's part of the journey, and it's necessary, it's not the end of the journey. And this is what happens at the other bookend, at the other side of the journey, is reintegrating with that undifferentiated ocean of consciousness. But it doesn't mean that you lose your individuality. Becoming an ascended master does not, it's not like joining the Borg. I use this joke all the time. It's not like, or becoming like some flavorless, like bland, I want to say like gelatin flavor, like some flavorless bland, like, like unflavored gelatin or something like that. Like that's not what an ascended master is. It's not having no personality. It's not that at all. Or some kind of like, oh, like I'm the Borg. It's not like that. Each person maintains their own individuality, their own flavor, and their own flavor has been refined to such a point of, let's say, divine harmony and balance that it integrates perfectly with the rest of the symphony. So you are still an individual and you are perfectly integrated with context. So think of it, it would be like being an individuated organism, and you're surrounded by all of these other individuated organisms. However, the way that everybody meshes together and interacts is so perfect that it's peaceful, it's harmonic. Everybody is playing exactly the right note and exactly the right music, playing the right notes to keep your body alive, playing the right notes in terms of social integration and how you send out energy and how you receive energy. So all of that is, I need to drink water and organize myself. Hold on a sec here. I should go into the specifics of Flying Rainbow Lasagna and the exact dance movements. So I also kind of just rearranged myself on the chair. Let me move this down a little bit so you can see a little bit better. No, you can't really see. Okay, fine. So I'm kind of like half sitting with my, legs crossed there. You can kind of see my knees are up here. So, when I sit, that is the most comfortable way for me to sit. However, if anybody has like spinal issues or you can't sit comfortably like this, sit in a way that's comfortable for your own body. Sun gazing. How do I do sun gazing? It's not the same as sunbathing. I think we're going to get a visit from Cheeky Boss because she does the lasagna with me. Can you believe it? And there's sometimes when I might feel like a little bit like, oh, like I'm running the marathon. It's really hard. My energy is flagging. And she'll like jump up on my lap and be like, let's keep going. She's like my little external battery pack here. She's totally jumping up. Jump up, Cheeky. Yeah, awesome. We're ready to lasagna. We're ready to do the lasagna dancing. So yeah, and it's consensual. It's not something that I force on Cheeky at all. It's something that she loves to do. If she's not into it, she can go to her dog bed or do something else. Like it's never something where I never force any organism to do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna against their will. So, and dogs are very perceptive. She can feel what I'm doing and that it's a very fun thing. She's like, this is the most fun thing in the world. And I have headphones on, so the music is not too loud for her, but I think she can hear the music in the headphones too. So, okay. The first thing we do to sun gaze after Cheeky and I have had a wonderful breakfast and wonderful good physical exercise walking around the neighborhood, sit in a comfortable position for your particular body. I place my tongue on the roof of my mouth so that I'm making a complete circuit. And I look at the sun, but I don't look at the sun necessarily with my physical eyes. I look with my inner eye. So my physical eyes can be closed, or I can be wearing a hat that shades them, or I can use the trees or some other, like the edge of the windowsill or something like that in order to keep the sun from burning my actual physical retinas, because physical eyeballs are delicate and they can be overwhelmed by too much light. So this is the whole thing. Like you don't want to plug your mind directly into the power station of the galaxy. That's what the stellar network is. Or just like that David Bowie song, he'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our mind, the starman waiting in the sky. So that's what it is. The idea of taking in the right amount of energy, not so much that it's going to blow your mind, but the right amount of energy. And it's also, you don't have to be too literal. Like I definitely get more sun gazing, better energy on a day when the sun is out and there's no clouds or anything like that. But I do it even if it's cloudy, and when I've lived in climates when it's totally cloudy, like Humboldt County, it was cloudy most of the time. And I had to learn how to get the energy beyond the clouds. Like if you're in a plane and you fly over the clouds and you're like, okay, I'm getting the sunlight. Like I had to kind of mentally imagine that I was flying above the clouds. So don't be stuck in the literal. Don't be too literal. It is something that we can do. Tilt this down so you can see us both a little better. it is something that you can do even if it's not necessarily a perfectly sunny day. So the first thing is understanding that this is a tendril of connection, tendril of attention, and you send out your tendril of attention to connect with whatever you want to get that energy from. So in this case, it's the sun and the stellar network. So I literally make that portion of my anatomy reach out to the sun. You don't have to worry about that being burned. It is made to do that connection. That's what's supposed to happen. And so I sit with my back erect, but in a comfortable position. I connect with my tendril of attention to the sun, and I draw it in. And as I'm drawing it in, I breathe it in, and I breathe in that energy, and it goes into my sinuses up here and into my sinuses here, and I feel it filling up my whole body. I feel it filling up like a bowl, like where Cheeky is sitting in my lap. And I breathe again, and I feel it like filling up my tummy up to here. And I breathe in again, I feel it filling up my chest up to here, and then I'll breathe it in again, and then I feel it filling up all the way up to here, and then what I'll do is I'll send it out, up, and around, just like an ankh. Like an ankh shape. Here's the central core of the ankh, and then the loop goes up and around my head and in through the back, and then I send it back to the sun. It's like making an endless feedback loop with the sun and the whole rest of the stars. And I'll do that as many times as I need to in order to get my batteries full. So it depends on how depleted my batteries are, how much I need to be recharged. You know, like now I live in a very sunny climate, so I'm doing pretty well. There were other times when I lived in, you know, northerly, wintry climates when it was very, very hard for me to get all of the, it's like consciousness juice to make my practices go. So I do my sun gazing practice, and then I'm like, okay, I'm all charged up, I'm all ready. And I'll put on, like I said, awesome music. That's the next part of my recipe, because music really does make us feel certain things. Like sad music makes you feel sad, happy, upbeat music makes you feel happy. I like to put on music that I consider to be rockin', because a lot of Flying Rainbow Lasagna, this practice is about being a little bit rebellious. It's being a little bit rebellious to those controllers or overseers of humanity that would like to limit your expression, that would like to limit your freedom or where you can go in the time field. So it's being a little saucy. It's being like, no, I don't want to go and do what you want me to do. I want to do what I want to do. I want to live my life the way I want to live. I want to be free. You know, screw you, society. Screw you, occupier of the interstice. I want to be free. And that's the attitude that I would encourage everyone to embody. And as we begin to do this Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance, it's very much like pushing and pulling the levers of the cosmos. You're doing this dance on a genetic level, on an atomic level, on a consciousness level, and it's transforming the layers of reality that we each get to experience. So yeah, you don't just have to be here experiencing the Choose Your Own Adventure novel and be like, oh, my character died. Oh, my character died. You can actually rewrite the novel so that you don't have to keep on dying. And maybe you could even have an awesome, wonderful, expansive, fun, adventurous experience, as opposed to a tormented, torturous, grim death march type of experience, which is, we're all supposed to have this joyous, expansive opportunity, because we're supposed to be able to write our story, choose the road of time that we're driving down. So I put on awesome music, got my rock and roll attitude going, and then I begin with this basic up-down movement, and I'll show you this other video before I move on to level 2. So there's different orientations. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is made by this oscillating maneuver, and I showed you that first video. Then this maneuver can happen in various different axes or orientations: the up-down, the side-side, the in-out, and then the corners, all right? And those are like different chords. I got dog hair on me. They're like different chords or different combinations of amino acids that we can put together in order to make different building blocks of your body, different building blocks of reality. So it's, and so on the same way that we've got an 8-count beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to make this shape, we can also do an 8-count beat of the different possibilities of this shape. We can do up, down, side, side, in, out, top, bottom. And now I'm going to show you that video, okay? Oh, I know Chiki's super awesome. We'll get down to the share screen and get over to this one right here. And this is going to show you the various orientations. I hope you all can see it properly. Wait. We got to go back to the beginning. Back to the beginning. Back to, oh, no, it didn't show the right one. Hold on a minute. This thing is just never absolutely correct. This over here. This over here. I click the right buttons, everyone. I want you to know this. I click the right buttons, but the right things do not always come and show themselves. So now I'm doing it properly. Starting with the up down. When we do the up down, this is the up down orientation. We've got the flying rainbow lasagna. This is usually how you see it in my different sculptures and, you know, two-dimensionals. Whoa, now it's changing. Now it's doing the side to side. And we can also do combinations of like up, down, side, side. Then we're going to start doing in, out. Watch while it turns, turns, turns. It's going to turn, 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 turn. Then we're, oh, now we're doing in, out. Now we're vibrating along this axis. Check that out. And we're vibrating along one axis and we're also rotating at the same time. And I'll get to that question in the chat. And then here, there, check this miracle of animation now. Now you're understanding the side that I'm talking about. Like almost like the diagonals of a square going side to side. And these are the different orientations. And that's like saying there are 4 basic notes. Here's 4 basic notes. Play better. Can you hear it okay? There are 4 basic notes in that chord. But we can do all sorts of fun things with different combinations of 4 notes in a chord. We can do lots of fun and interesting things beyond merely playing those 4 notes. So there are these basic orientations: up, down, side, side, in, out, and then diagonal this way, or we can do diagonal, you know, from bottom to top, bottom to top. Those are basic building blocks. That's like saying, you know, let me drink some water here. We got the same music, the music of Mozart and the music of John Coltrane. They're all built on these same basic building blocks, the building blocks of, you know, the notes on the scale. So what I'm giving you here, these are the basic building blocks, but I'm not telling you any limitations in terms of what you're allowed to build with those building blocks. You are allowed to and encouraged to experiment with your own melodies and coming up with your own unique combinations, because guess what? Each one of you is unique. You each have your own genetic code. You each have your own provenance. Provenance meaning like you have a piece of special artwork or an antique or something like that. And the antique has a story of where it came from and who owned it and who made it and how it got into your family. Your body and the photons that make up you and your consciousness has a provenance, a story, an origin story as to where you came from. And your stories are all slightly different than my stories. Like, I came from that direction, and then I came here, and then I came through the flying rainbow lasagna, now I'm doing this. But that's not your stories. And this is a beautiful recognition. This is like a very good thing that there's so much. This is why our system is way stronger and more uncrackable and encrypted from the very predictable artificial intelligence system that has been running things for a very, very long time. And I'll get into that in advanced class. But the basic idea is we're these biological organisms and we have wonderful provenance in terms of consciousness and photons and where we've come from and where we're going, way more complex and special and important than any kind of clone or predictable programmed organism. And that the more diversity there is, like if there's 500 people that are watching this video, 500 people and 500 different unique individual genetic codes, 500 new melodies that are being made, 500 new thoughts, 500 new thought structures, and imagine that expands exponentially. Every new variable is a new node on this network, and the more variables and the more nodes that are activated, the more complexity there is, the more difficult it is to break the encryption that is going on. And we're talking about the symphony of life, and it involves all of the organisms, atoms, molecules, microorganisms, macroorganisms, planets, galaxies. Let me get to the question. There was a question that says, do you incorporate any conscious breathing when doing FRL? So the answer is yes. Like when I'm doing that sun gazing, I'm doing kind of like a circular breathing in. And when I'm doing the actual dance movements, and I'll do some of that, I think probably in level 2 for you, some actual, like I got cheeky over here, but I should do it for level 1. Cheeky's used to me doing this. So when I do the actual flying rainbow lasagna, like I'm so in it, I don't think that I can tell you how I'm exactly breathing, because it's just like when you're an athlete and you're busy focused on the ball, you're busy focused on your goal and your objective, and also your breath is very rhythmic too. So I move my hands, and when I'm moving my hands, I'm doing the mental exercise at the same time of up, down, side, side, in, out, and then at the corners. And when I do these dances with my hands, and I also use my toes at the same time, because I'm pushing and pulling the levers of the cosmos, and we can use all 4 of our limbs to do this. And you can use every cell of your body to do this. And you can use all of your timelines to do this. Because I've been playing the piano, my right hand tends to be faster and does the melody, quote unquote, and my left hand tends to be a little bit slower and tends to hold down the rhythm. So I'll be doing these particular movements, and I notice my right hand goes really, really fast. My left hand tends to hold down the rhythm. And what I'll also do is, at a certain point, it's just like playing music. You do music, 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 and then there's a measure break, like the end of that musical phrase. There's a break. And so I'll do creation, 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 and then I'll be bringing my hands together like this, which mirrors or is analogous to when cells are engaged in mitosis and all of the chromosomes line up and they begin to do this perfect, it looks a lot like that. And when I'm bringing my hands together, what I'm envisioning is erasing any loose ends. When I do my paintings, I do these drawings first. Sometimes I have sketches or mush marks or things that didn't work completely properly. Before I put the ink on, before everything gets finalized, I erase out all of the little smudges and things that aren't supposed to be there and mistakes. I have an electrical eraser that does it perfectly. That's what I'm doing with my hands. First, I'm doing all this wild creative stuff like Jackson Pollock. I'm throwing paint all over. I'm throwing timelines all over. But maybe my mind wandered. Maybe some of that paint splattered in a way that I didn't quite like. When I do this bringing together thing with my hands, what I'm intending is erasing all of the unintended events, erasing all the mistakes, erasing all the stuff that's not supposed to be there, literally making it rewind in time, like rewinding it backwards in time. And then everything collapses together, and then everything expands again apart from there. So that's what my basic flying rainbow lasagna dance looks like from an outside observer, that I bring this timelines together, and then that is like measure break, and then begin again on the next measure of music. And these are like creating energetic firewalls, because let's say we're creating events. Maybe the event is like, you want to have a party. So your timeline, 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 and then you bring it all together, erase all the things that you don't want to have happen, make sure you lock it in, and then you are ready for creating the next possibility in life. This is part of this like encryption, firewall, security measures that are necessary, because it's very much like if you're in an art studio and you're making your oil painting with glazes and it takes a long time for it to dry, you put on your perfect glazes and they're like, oh, now I'll just go out and get a cup of coffee and a sandwich and I'll come back in several hours. You come back in several hours and maybe someone took a rag and smeared it on. It's like, wait, my perfect glaze is what happened. Well, that can happen with your intentions. If you are doing all this timeline transformational work with your intentions, if you do not have those encryptions, firewalls, and measure breaks. If someone can get into your studio and have access to all of your paintings, quote unquote, then they can smear all of your beautiful paintings. So what you have to do is make certain that your DNA is encrypted. No one else gets to access your DNA except for you. And then I do, and I encourage others to do this practice too. It's like working in chunks. I worked on that chunk. I worked on that chunk of time. I added goodness to that chunk of time and organized it in the way I wanted to. I erased the things I don't want there, and then I locked it in so that no one else is going to mess with that chunk of time. And that this is, important as being like a responsible creator, that we are making sure that no one's going to hijack our creation is the answer. Okay. I'm squinting and scrolling. Ben says, I would like more clarity regarding placing the moment in context. As you say, putting the time field in a box and then jumping up and down. What is the context? The context is the possibilities of the future. So in this yellow sculpture and in the time bubble cosmology of the Big Bang that science describes, science does not formally recognize the existence of the future. It recognizes the existence of the past and the present moment, but not the potentials of the future. And at best, quantum theory says, well, the future is just a bunch of uncollapsed waveforms in fifth dimensional and higher possibilities. The future is actually like a series of train cars or roads, or, it's something that's definitely in existence. So placing our time bubble in that context of possible futures is what allows us to vibrate and connect the past with the future. And that's what this flying rainbow lasagna can also be connecting past with future, past with future, past with future. And that in level 2, I'll get into scoops from the genetic buffet and how we can actually put that into practice. Okay, last question, and then I'll do moving on to level 2 so my upload doesn't get too long. By the way, I don't want to disrupt your flow in this class. No, you're perfect then, don't worry. You may have answered my question on context a few minutes ago. I'll review the recording. Okay, so yes, so context means placing ourselves in the context of past, the events that have led us to this moment, and also future events and possibilities that radiate forward from this moment, that we're not just stuck in nowheresville. Like, science recognizes the past has happened, it recognizes the present has happened. Science doesn't perceive or recognize the future. This is a huge issue. It's like science not wanting to recognize the existence of consciousness. It's part of the recipe. You can't not recognize consciousness. Okay, great, excellent. So let me end level 1. In level 2, I'm going to get into the advanced explanation of how we do the flying rainbow lasagna dance with other people, other organisms across time, covalent bonding across time, and more fun with the genetic mishmash. I'll get to that question on part 2. Okay, thank you very much.